Final Fantasy VII and the illusion of open world. Let's get odd. So if you're a cool person, you probably should have played through Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 by now. And while I myself really loved the game was really very extremely painfully linear. It got kind of annoying actually. Now, I cannot understate how much I really loved the game, but I'm pretty sure I would have loved it more if I had the option to be able to explore Midgar a little more openly. Basically, it was those warning signs that got to me. Some of you might have already seen this, but a while back I made a video comparing the linearity of Final Fantasy VII Remake to the quote-unquote open world of Final Fantasy XV. But let's talk about what happens in the OG Final Fantasy VII after Cloud and crew leave Midgar. Is it really open world? I think some people see the world map and the fact that you're able to roam freely on the world map. I think some people perceive that as open world. But is it really? I mean, let's think about it. Can you truly freely explore the world of Gaia right after you leave Midgar? Can you go straight to the Gold Saucer? Can you go to the Temple of Ancients? What about Junon? Costa del Sol? Nope. There is still a linear set of events that you need to experience as the game goes along. The last piece of direction that we get after we leave Midgar is Barrett says that there is a town northeast of Midgar called Calm. And spoiler alert, they are also heading towards Calm at the end of episode intermission. Then after you leave Calm, you can't even cross the marshes until after you've gone to the Chocobo farm. There are steps that you need to take in order to advance through the game. Let me sidestep for a moment and talk about The Legend of Zelda. I love the franchise. I love Twilight Princess, I love Ocarina of Time, I love many of the games. And then we get to Skyward Sword. I've been recently playing the HD version on the Switch. I think it's a really solid game. But the first time I played it way back in 2011, it was the first time that I felt like it was lesser Zelda to me. It felt a little predictable, very linear, and almost formulaic. Then they went in a completely different direction for Breath of the Wild, or BOT dubs as I like to call it. Breath of the Wild is a lot more open world than previous Zelda games, especially when compared to Skyward Sword. Once you step off of that Great Plateau, you can go pretty much anywhere on the map. Now, I'm not saying I want Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 to be as open world as Breath of the Wild, but I also wouldn't want it to be as linear as Skyward Sword. And I'm not even saying I want Remake Part 2 to mimic the open world aspect of Final Fantasy XV. The developers have already cryptically stated that Remake Part 2 will explore the vastness of the world. We won't know the exact specifics of what that means until we get closer to the release of the game. I felt like the linearity of Remake Part 1 really worked for that game because of the narrative that they wanted to tell and the way that they wanted to tell it. I would love to be able to explore more freely in Remake Part 2, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to work if, for example, right after we leave Midgar, we would be able to head straight to the Gold Saucer or straight to the Temple of Ancients. That would definitely mess with the narrative of the story. I don't think that's what they're going to do for Remake Part 2. I definitely think that balance is important to the story of Final Fantasy VII. So in my opinion, ideally, I would like for the game to be somewhere in the middle, not so super narrow and linear as Remake Part 1, but obviously not completely open as well. I would just like the option to explore a little more and definitely get rid of those warning signs. But either way, I'm really looking forward to the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, probably in the year 2030, along with the release of the Zulu variant of COVID. So I know some of you really enjoyed the linear aspect of Remake Part 1, but I also know some of you would want it to be a little more open as well. So let me know your thoughts, cast your votes below. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing if you liked this video and you want to see more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Stay odd and keep on playing.